You're currently on a bouncy ball?
Yeah.
Please show me. I need to do that just so I get abs. That's how I hear you could get abs, is by doing the bouncy ball thing.
Yes, if you're rocking on it.
I know. I need to do that. My gosh.
Too excited and bounce around and have to remind myself, be still.
Do you always sit on a bouncy ball?
I was pregnant. I've enjoyed it a lot more. I got this when I was pregnant, so haven't been sitting in hard chairs.
There was a girl that I used to work with that literally would sit on one all the time, and she was so fit. And I'm like, dang, I really need to invest in this ball.
They're fun.
I know. I'm so pumped we get to talk today. We said it's been how many years since we got to be in a room together?
Yeah.
And we're not even in a room together today.
Right. A virtual room.
A virtual room. It's been like, how old is our friend's daughter? 4, 3?
3 or 4, yeah.
My gosh.
3.
3 years. 4. So it's been kind of 4 years.
Yeah, true.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot's happened in 4 years.
Yeah.
Crazy. But the huge reason we get to talk today is because of an incredible book that you've written that I'm so excited to share with everyone. On the Shores of Grief. It's just it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. And I just can't wait for everyone to know more about it and more about your story. And the photographs in this book are beautiful. Tell me about that.
So On the Shores of Grief is a collection of writings that I collected as my first husband battled cancer. He passed away in July of 2022, and I continued writing after he passed through my grieving process about how God met me in some of the most vulnerable, heart-wrenching moments. And about 2 months after Michael passed away, one of my friends, it was actually a mutual friend, we met different ways, but she reached out to me. She was a friend from high school, and she's a photographer. And she was like, hey, would you want to take some pictures with me at the lake one morning? And I had this fabric that's sheer, and to me, it looks like a veil. I didn't wear it as a veil, but like in my, but, like I believe in the Old Testament time period, they would wear veils to mourn. And so I brought that with me, and the pictures are very raw, very, like there's mud on my hands and my feet, and I'm just in a simple leotard, and I was a dancer, so that makes
a great one.
Thank you. So yeah, we got there at like early morning sunrise, and it didn't even feel like the same place in our hometown. It felt like a different place that morning. There was fog, and it was just so mystifying. And she captured this really unique, like in between longing and grieving and wrestling in the mud, and just who am I now, and what is there left? And I'm just raw. So I wanted to pair those pictures in with the writings, because it was part of that in between process of walking through being a wife into being a widow. And I thought she captured a lot of the emotion that is hard to put into words through her photos.
That's amazing. And honestly, I believe that as people read this book and look at the photographs within them, you can feel exactly what you just said. They bridge that gap in such a beautiful way. And I think selfishly, because I've been able to experience just who you are in regards to dance and your heart for dance. I remember years ago, we talked about you wanting to have a studio and dreams of what that looked like. And it was just so beautiful to be able to see the way that God's gifted you in that way be portrayed um, it's it's almost how grief came out in an artistic way within you, and being able to use someone else's artistic gifts as well to be able to pair in such a
Mhm.
gorgeous way. Um,
Thank you.
so did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. And I hadn't thought about this or put this together, but when you just said that, I realized dance is something that got me through. That was in my through line.
Mm.
And the moments we were in Mexico or hospitals, he would be asleep and I would wake up or stand next to his bed and just play music softly and just move through my emotions,
Mhm.
not even knowing what I'm thinking or feeling, but just expressing. And dance has been such a beautiful artistic tool for me through this whole thing. I am glad to realize that in this moment.
Right. It's amazing. So just like backing up, as much as you feel comfortable or led to be able to share a summary of your story, um, from the beginning of meeting your former husband into where God has you now, I would love for you to share some of that, as we start to talk about those writings.
Absolutely. So I in 2015, I graduated college and I was introduced to my first husband, Michael, through a mutual friend. And at that point, I wasn't looking to date anybody. I thought, okay, we're out of college, we're figuring out who we are, where we're going to be. I'll meet this guy and see if maybe we'll be friends. And, excuse me, at that point, I had three options in my mind of what I was going to do after college. I was either going to move to Dallas because I had been to a dance audition in Dallas and felt the creative spirit of the city that interests me. I wanted to take a trip to New Zealand for 2 weeks. So I was planning that and seeing if that was an option. Or I was going to move out of my parents' house and get a taste of independence for sure. So,
As we do.
yeah. So I chose the what I saw as a good in between, not leaving home yet, but taking a step on my own end. I got an apartment and I met this man, Michael, for coffee, and we ended up dating for 9 months, and we got engaged and married. And through that dating process, actually, when I met him, I knew that he had been diagnosed with cancer, and he went the traditional route and did chemotherapy and surgery his senior year of college, and ended up being clear. His doctor said he was clear. And the first time I met him, he had just finished chemotherapy. So he was very thin and he had lost his hair and it was starting to grow back. Um, and I remember talking to my mom about meeting this guy, and she said, I respect my parents have been so awesome in supporting me in anything that I choose. She's like, I respect your decision, but I want to ask you, have you considered, like, what if the cancer comes back?
Hmm.
And
What an interesting question early on.
yeah, I was appreciative that she was concerned about that and wanted to make sure that um, so, so yeah, I thought about it for a second and I realized, he's in the clear now. The statistics for this type of cancer, it was testicular cancer, are pretty good. There's an 80% cure rate with this chemotherapy. If it comes back, he'll probably be well over 40 or 50 and we'll have a good chunk of life together. So, and I trust God. Like that's what I told her. I trust that God will be with us and he will be healed. We'll just see where this goes.
Mhm.
So we ended up getting married, and a week after our third anniversary, he went in for his 5-year cancer clear checkup. And on a Friday, they gave him a clear. They were like, yay, go celebrate. It's your 5 years. And in the cancer world, once you pass that 5-year mark, you're basically in the clear. Um, I actually learned later on through our process or his healing journey that they kind of stop tracking you after 5 years. So
Hmm.
we don't really have the real statistics on that. But he, Friday was clear and then went to work on Monday and got a phone call while he was at work. And he came home early and he just walked in the door. I was at the house and he had a somber look on his face. And I was like, what's going on? Something's wrong. Turns out they found a tumor between his spine and his lungs. And that just was a mess for the next 3.5 years. Um, we we tried traditional medicine. His father was diagnosed with the same cancer 7 years before he was, and tried to go a holistic route. And so he had made a vow to himself that he would not go that way. He would stay traditional medicine with traditional medicine. And so anyway, we did surgeries, he did radiation. He wasn't going to do chemo again because the odds were not good for doing it again. Um, all the way up until the doctor said, this is terminal. You're 26 years old and this is not gonna be good for you. So we chose to do more research and we went the holistic route. We found an amazing cancer center in Mexico called Hope for Cancer. And
Which is a beautiful facility.
so beautiful. They have 2 locations in Cancun and one in Tijuana. There's one in each place. And it's a beautiful place for healing. They use non-toxic therapies. They use nutrition and emotional therapy. They just approach healing as a whole, not just like, oh, your liver's sick. Let's focus on what else is going on. So yeah, we ended up spending a collective 6 months in Mexico over multiple trips. And in 2022, our last trip there, we left in February from Tennessee to go to Mexico, and we stayed until the beginning of June. And we lived in a hotel. It was a resort. It was a beautiful hotel right across the street from the clinic. But it was a room. We lived in a room. Everybody's coming here to celebrate birthdays and weddings, and there's a select couple of people who are there from all over the world fighting for life in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a weird juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, we left at the beginning of June, and then when we got home, he was just in and out of the hospital. His health continued to decline, and the aggressive cancer ended up taking his life at the end of July 2022. So that is kind of the story that led me to widowhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And just to take a moment
Yeah.
to honor Michael's life, Michael was a gift. When you were in a room with him, he very clearly spent time with Jesus because of who he was.
Right.
And he noticed the people that were in the room and made sure to be with the people in the room, fully present.
Right.
And there was just a light about him.
Oh, man. Anywhere we went, people just like a moth to a flame. They just were attracted to him, to his spirit. And something miraculous happened on his healing journey. He wasn't healed physically, but witnessing his character in those deepest, darkest moments of pain, it's amazing. It's really amazing how his spirit was strengthened and how I did witness healing in his soul. He was more refined and more in love with Jesus than he had been before.
Mm-hmm.
On that last day of his life too. He was just brilliant and shining and such a gift.
And I would say the same thing even for you to be able to watch as a friend from the outside looking in, being able to see just the way God has designed you and given you grace to be able to walk through something with such strength and patience and kindness and selflessness. That is a word that like resonated over and over and over as I read through this is and I'm sure we have moments, right? But we all know that. But to see the selflessness in the way that you not only supported, but just continue to stay um, apart from me, you can do nothing, tethered
Yeah.
to the Lord in the hardest moments of your life. I mean, was just something to be mentioned. So
Thank you.
just
I
amazing.
could not have come out on the other side with any hope without the Lord and the experiences I had along the way with God and His Spirit.
Mm. Well, and as you went through and your writings in the book are just beautiful. But one thing that I realized as you process through your grief in your writings, something you said, I want to make sure that I get it correct. It says, isn't it extraordinary? The sun lingers softly along the horizon twice a day. And that perspective to me was incredible. And I would love to know just how, because that perspective doesn't naturally happen in a world that we live in. And I would just love to know more about how you gained that insight to be able to recognize, wow, the sun rises in the morning, goes down in the evening. It's beautiful both times.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. So last night we were on our way back from Nashville to Dallas, and I'll have to tell you another part of that story now. I'm in Dallas now, but
mhm.
dark in Nashville when our plane took off, and it was icy. It started to flurry, and they had to de-ice the plane before we took off. And I was thinking as we got up in the air above the clouds, it was so clear in the sky, and the remnants of the sunset were on the horizon. It was a deep, dark, burnt orange fading into a rainbow into the night sky. And it's, you know, that happens twice a day, every day, whether we can see it or not. There may be weather, there may be storms, there may be ice surrounding us, but above the clouds, this rhythm of the sun rising and setting is happening every day. And
Mhm.
it's it's beautiful. It's a circadian rhythm. It's something that keeps us going.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's a shift in perspective. Another side of that is when you're in survival mode and you put you press pause on the things that you're used to going through every day, the rhythms that you're used to having. Um,
Mhm.
the sun rising and setting becomes that count, that time, the rhythm that's getting you through each day.
Mhm.
Something that I really love is lingering after a sunset. I would drive myself to the lake after Michael passed almost every day to watch the sunset. And I noticed that the people around me would leave as soon as it went under the horizon, but I would stay and just stare at the sky. And that's when the most vibrant colors would come out. Like 10, 20, 30 minutes after the sun is below the horizon and you can't see it anymore, just lingering and waiting on the Lord, waiting on maybe nothing, just being
Mhm.
that um, this picture unfolds with brighter colors and shapes in the clouds that if we hurry and leave as soon as we think it's done or it's time, we would miss, right?
Mm-hmm. So more lingering.
More lingering.
More lingering.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself doing more lingering now?
I wish I could say yes. I I don't right now. The season of life that I'm in has me feeling pretty stretched, but
Explain that. We got to update everyone on your life.
so let's see. So I mentioned Dallas being an option before I met Michael. Uh, the year following his passing was very special, very hard. I felt very close to the Lord in that time. And as I came up upon the year to date, July 31st, 2023, I felt like I was asking the Lord, okay, we're about to meet that mark, that 1 year mark without Michael. What does my life look like from here? Like, I know that Michael would want me to live as fully as I can. He tried to suck all the nectar out of life. He wanted to be here and experience it so fully. And he would be sad if I just lingered in my pain. So, what do you have for me, Lord? I'm open. And in my journaling, I felt like the Lord said, well, just wait until August. Everything's going to change in August. So July 31st came and I literally felt like a door had opened into August. It's crazy. Uh, a couple months before I came to Dallas for a dance intensive, there was an opportunity to dance again, and I had put that on pause for a couple years while I was with Michael as his caregiver and companion. So I was like, okay, I want to dance. Let's see how this goes. I'll go to Dallas to dance. And I ended up being invited to join a company here and decided to move. Um, I was prayerful through all of this, and I had our house in Tennessee, had our cars in Tennessee. Like, what am I going to do? So I put our house on the market, and nobody was coming to look at it at first. And I thought, okay, maybe I'm hearing God wrong. What do I do? Uh, I'm looking in Texas. I found a place in Texas. My house in Tennessee is not sold. In faith, I signed a contract on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. And that day, Wednesday at 2 p.m., there was a scheduled tour of my house in Tennessee. Random in the middle of the week. That doesn't really happen.
Wednesday at 2.
Ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the Lord whispered to my heart, there's a divine exchange. And so, long story short, I get an offer on my house the next morning from that person that walked through the same time I was signing my contract in Texas. And her name is Amanda, and she's a single woman.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I knew that that was the offer to accept. And long story short, I moved to Dallas. My parents and I loaded up the U-Haul. I had one friend come and help, and we drove across the country. 10 days after I moved here, I was in the full swing of dance rehearsals. I went to a young adults night at Upper Room Church, downtown Dallas. And as I was walking out at 10 o'clock at night, this man in front of me was holding the door open, and he asked me what my name was. And we went on a date that night.
Where'd you go? It's important.
Like 10 o'clock, right? On a Friday.
Yeah.
Places were closing. And there was a pie place open, Pie Emporium.
Oh, what?
We got some pie and took it to the park and just sat and talked. And 3 weeks later, he asked if I would marry him. And there's so many details I could go into about just feeling the confirmation and peace both of us had to move forward. But we went to Nashville and he proposed in front of my family 3 weeks after we met. And we decided to elope the next weekend. So
So great.
we went to Colorado and we eloped. And that was in September last year. Thanksgiving week last year, we found out we were pregnant. And the baby's due date was July 31st.
Mm.
Crazy, crazy.
So crazy.
That to me was the Lord saying, I exchange death for life and ashes for beauty.
Mm. Beautiful.
I had a baby. Labor started the next morning after the 31st. And he is 4 months old now. I'm a mom and a wife. And
Now you're trying to catch your breath
yeah. And I'm
from all you've been
processing
doing.
the whirlwind of all of the change in a new
Yeah.
place with just a new name. And
Mm.
it's wild.
Mm-hmm. And beautiful.
And so beautiful. I am speechless. God is so good. He is a redeemer.
Mm.
I mean, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this life. And I'm so grateful for what I walked through with Michael. And my husband, Tidius, is literally, if God and Michael could sit there and choose somebody to walk beside me, I feel like that's probably what happened. Because this man is so respectful and honors Michael and my time with him. He's given me space to continue grieving as things come up, and hasn't made me feel like he's uncomfortable or challenged by the life that I had before I met him.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think in your book, what is coming out, I feel so many wonderful emotions right now, but I love that you speak to vulnerability. And I think that even right now, as you're sharing your story, it is fairly vulnerable to be able to share that story and to even go into the depths of places in your heart. And I mean, I'm someone who also got married quickly. So for you to sit there and say, yeah, we met, we this, so we this, that is even vulnerable because we're putting ourselves all the time at the thoughts of others, right? But I love that what you said in the book. You said, I'm going to make sure I read it. Vulnerability tills the soil for deeper roots in relationship. And I love that because, and I think the way that God designed us in a lot of ways, if we're in an elevator with somebody, like I'm going to know their life story by the end, like by the third floor, I will know what's going on. And so what I love is that I just would love to know how, by being vulnerable, it's opened up your heart to others, but also just the role that vulnerability has played in your life now. And because I believe that it has had a beautiful place. This entire book is your vulnerability, the whole thing.
Yeah. It's true.
And that's big.
Pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just love to know the role that it's played in your life.
Thank you for that question. I think that's a beautiful question. I've realized that we all have stories, right? When you meet a stranger or even people that you know that are in your family, when you sit down and give each other time to ask questions and seek to understand the other person and to find out more about them, when you get curious, I've found that there's a lot more we have in common than we realize. And in those times when I've slowed down and even like started to share a little something that feels vulnerable to me with somebody, I find that that kind of creates an invitation for them to reciprocate. And what once was a relationship or a conversation that was kind of bouncing on the surface takes on a different level. We go to a different level with each other, and the soil becomes richer, the soil for that relationship to grow, for those roots to go deeper. And relationships, friendships are two people. It requires input from two people. So if you're just vulnerable and the other person isn't reciprocating, that relationship's not going to grow. And if the same is true if you're just bouncing on the surface all the time, that relationship is not going to grow deep roots.
Right.
So, I found when we went to Mexico the first time, I did not expect meeting people from all over the world and those relationships creating such a deep bond. I knew that other people would be there fighting for life, but it was those moments that we said, hey, let's be intentional. You've been at the clinic all day. Let's get together and have dinner at the hotel together and get to know each other's story. Sharing parts of our stories, we find parts of ourselves in each other, and we learn more about each other and about ourselves and about the world. Our perspective broadens, and the bonds are strengthened between people. So, I mean, there were people from all over the world, like I said, but we didn't connect with all of them. We don't have relationships with all of them. It's the people that we spent time with and shared our stories with that, even though they're on the other side of the world, we feel that strengthened connection too.
That's so amazing. It makes me really think about farming and just like the richness. If we planted seeds and left them, like, of course, some would grow. But there's something that happens, I think, when you really work soil in general and blend in. When you blend things into that soil, there's a richness in it that grows strong things. And when you take that in the context of relationship, and what vulnerability can create in the soil of our relationships, it's just mind-blowing.
If you think about churning soil too, you're taking the parts of the soil that are in the dark underneath the layers of the dirt, and you're bringing those up to the light, and the light plays into the health of the soil, and so does the dark, the deep, the moisture rich roots. It all is part of the health of the soil and the flourishing of the garden, the fruit, the vegetables.
Sheesh, we need to write something about that.
There's so much in farming and planting. There's so many metaphors that are so good.
So good. So good. Well, I'd love to know, I mean, you're a new mama of a 4-month-old. You're in Dallas, still dancing? Yes.
Not so much. Yeah.
Baby mode?
Hopefully we'll get back into that. Yeah.
Yeah. But just like in the thick of life right now and still carrying your story into this new season. And I'd love to know just what you're learning right now.
Ooh. I am learning a lot. Learning that we are dynamic. Human beings are dynamic. I'm learning that my identity isn't in what I do or even who I'm in relationship with. Those are parts of who I am, or parts of who I am come out through those places. But like the minute Michael passed away, I was a wife, and then I was a widow, and my identity shifted, and I had an identity crisis in that moment. And
right.
The Lord has just taken me through layers of identity the last 5 years, places I've found identity in that have felt like they've been stripped away or I've had to lay down. And that's continuing to be refined as I pick up wife again and I pick up mother now. And I'm having to remember not to cling so hard to those roles or those titles, but to hold them with grace and remember who I am as a child of God. And it's a daily, like, who am I and what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a daily thing that he's showing me and teaching me.
What is helping you most right now? You are creative,
Mm.
to say the least. And I would just love to know in this season, this is selfish, me asking you this question, just because I'm curious. Um, in this season of you kind of grasping towards, because having a 4-month-old, not everyone has babies around here, but like the identity part is a thing.
Mhm.
And so I would love to know when you feel most yourself, what helps you feel most yourself in this season.
Yeah. The moments that I've gotten there's a twofold answer here. The moments that I've gotten time alone to think without having my mind split on other people's
Mm-hmm.
needs around me, um, that has given me clarity to think about who I am and who God is, and just hear my thoughts more clearly and process where things are at in life. So those moments of alone time that are few and far between right now, and also the moment
Oh, preach.
so precious.
Yeah.
Also those moments when I'm holding my son Anthem and I'm witnessing him realize something for the first time or learn something for the first time, and just seeing the wonder in his eyes and the pure joy is there's nothing like it. It's just so exciting and beautiful. Um, and it reminds me that life, it can be so simple, and helps me connect back to that childlike wonder. So,
I love that.
yeah.
Um, I want everyone in the world to read this book that you've written. It is beautiful. And I think I told you I read this in like a day. I could not stop. I have so many things underlined and highlighted, and um these thoughts have really started like almost a journal entry opportunities for me to be able to ask certain questions to myself. Um, but I would love you kind of shared before we got on this call about your heart for this book, and I would love for you to share that. And then just where we can find it.
Awesome. Thank you. I've heard a lot of people say the feedback I've gotten, people have said that they have read it in a day, and like I'm glad that it's, that it's able to be digested that way. Um, my heart is that people can feel seen in whatever they're experiencing. Grief is not just the loss of a spouse. We we grieve the loss of other, family members and friends. We grieve changes in seasons of our lives, selling a home and moving to a new place. There's grief in that. So I think anybody can relate to some of those principles, some of those emotions that you experience through grief. And my heart is that this book will help broaden people's perspective of who God is and how to invite him into those painful moments, and how to find hope, and not the hope that's like flowery, let's forget about the past and pretend everything's okay, but like deep guttural hope that
Mhm.
keeps you going, keeps you breathing, gives you a reason to wake up again.
Mm.
Um, and my book is online on Amazon and online at Barnes and Noble. If you just type in On the Shores of Grief, it should pop up.
Awesome. I'll put links for all of them in
Oh,
there
thanks.
and anywhere else people can find you because I'm sure that some people want to reach out.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability as we talked about this and your friendship. And we don't have to be in the room every year to still be friends. And I love that. So
So, sure.
it's beautiful to see um, you just flourishing and all the things that because of the time you've spent in the soil and with him doing things that are hard, watching that come out in such a beautiful way. And so, yeah, just thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you, Mindy. Thanks for your time and for reaching out. I've enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Me too. Me too. And I'm going to try to push pause
Okay.
so that I can